Alright guys, today we're going to be reacting to how I see the United States after living in Europe for 5 years. Very interesting video. This is from the channel, let me pronounce the channel one more time. Type Ashton, I think is her name. Make sure you guys go to her channel, give some love. She just, uploading very good content. Very good perspective. Even though I disagree with her on a lot of topics, it's always good to just get some information from different sides of the equation. I would like to see what you have to say, since I'm in a situation where I don't like certain things on my country, especially when it comes down to working. I didn't have any parental leave when I had my kids, and that was amazingly disturbing. So that's why I'm just really doing my YouTube stuff and just making sure I can just get the freedom that I really want, man. I really don't like to work for people. I'm telling you, folks. I'm an entrepreneur by heart. I've been doing sales for many years, and now I started working with W-2 as a worker salary, and I hate it. I'm not gonna lie. We're just gonna jump in, see what's going on. Make sure you guys go to the Discord, show some love. If you have some videos idea, you can put them in the reaction section, and also make sure you check some of my links in the description down below. Let's jump in.
One of the things that I have fought to challenge on this channel on YouTube is prevailing stereotypes and taking a look at whether or not they are true or false. And the thing about stereotypes is that they're really nothing new. We have held prejudices about someone from somewhere else for as long as time has been recorded.
Well, what have you given the world apart from George Bush, Cheerios, and the Fry Master?
Chinese food?
Chinese food.
Of course, there are exceptions to every generalization, but the thing about stereotypes is that, well, they wouldn't be perpetuated if there wasn't at least a grain of truth in there.
So we're not only talking about Americans, right? Does that mean you had to apply the same concept of stereotypes to everything else? Am I right? Am I right on this concept? And we're gonna just start the argument and the statement with this point of view. That means that we have to apply the same levels of standard to everything. That's my point.
There. And the jokes that we make about each other probably wouldn't be funny if they weren't at least partially true. I would bet most non-Americans would look at me quite skeptically if I described the United States as a quiet, pacifist country that's very respectful to other nations and cultures, and we don't like bringing attention to ourselves. I would lose all credibility, right? I mean, I wouldn't believe me. Now, over the course of the past couple of years, I've made a library of videos discussing the cultural, social, legal, and economic differences between the US and Europe, and all of the various places and regions that I have visited. And I'm not the first American to live abroad in Europe. There are loads of other content creators out there that offer fun and lighthearted takes on the culture shocks that they experience and stereotypes they encounter as expats. Everything from discovering how the windows open to the thrill of driving on the Autobahn for the first time. But I've lived here for 5 years now, and quite frankly, the word expat doesn't really describe me. I refer to myself as an immigrant in the full sense of that word. I live here, I work here, and I'm raising my family here. And so any kind of substantive analysis, especially when I reflect back on life in the United States, has to go beyond these superficial observations. I want to look deeper at the trends, beliefs, and priorities that I'm noticing in people in these two respective parts of the world. And fair warning, these are just my opinions. These are my observations that I see in the world around me and that I see within myself as I navigate between these two continents.
That's beautiful.
So you can take it or you can leave it. And if you hear something that you disagree with that I said in this video, please feel free to leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Americans pride themselves on a strong sense of patriotism. Quite frankly, we frequently tell ourselves that we are
second to none, and we own the finish line.
Patriotic, hardworking Americans.
America is still the best there is. Americans are still the best people, nicest in the world. It's a sweet country. It's why we fought off the metric system all these years, and thank heaven we have.
Not really.
That was a good meme. That was a very good meme. I have to give it to her. That was very good.
And again, while not everyone tends to think this way, this type of thinking is so pervasive in American culture that at times it almost takes on divine undertones.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So help me.
What is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? I don't see nothing wrong with that. Just, as a Christian, I love that. Divine devotion, yeah, we owe to God. This is a nation built in Christianity. This is a very new nation. It was built in the system of Christianity. I don't see nothing wrong with that.
Me God.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So help me God.
But perhaps the best manifestation of what it means to be a great country in the majority of American eyes is our strong declaration of freedom. And that's really interesting given the fact that the US is by no means the only free nation in the world. Sure, we might be among the oldest modern democracies, but
we're not a democracy. You see where this video is going? I have to be careful. The United States is not a democracy at all. We're not a democracy at all. Nothing. The only thing that we have is democratic exercises, but we're not a democracy. We're not. You're seeing United States to the glance of European systems, which is so far away. Like, it's so far away. It's crazy. It's like seeing the United States through the glance of UK. Like why we say that? Why we always say, and this is the problem with the media. Like, because the media says it all the time doesn't make it true. Like, we're not a democracy. We're not. We're so far beyond that. We are a constitutional republic. No democracy can go beyond that. No, zero. Democracies are held by the majority, not in the United States. See, we have to be careful here, man.
modern times, the United States comes in 17th when ranked globally. But I have often noticed that how Americans define and celebrate freedom is what stands in contrast to here in Europe. You see, in the United States, American freedom is the freedom towards something. It's often framed as the freedom to be whomever you want, the freedom to do whatever you want, the freedom to say whatever you want. And for sure, this positionality on freedom comes from the very nature of our nation's founding and expansion. But in modern times, this freedom for unlimited potential also comes with some consequences. In the US, we also tend to see those who don't live up to society's standard of quote unquote potential as being lazy or a freeloader. We take pride in pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps and working hard for the American dream, even if the reality is that the majority of wealth in our nation is held by those who were born into it.
That's not true. That's not true. That will disappear between 2 to 3 generations. That's not true. The majority of wealth held in the United States are actually new millionaires. Because wealth cannot be held. So a lot of wealth in the United States, it just disappear in between 2 to 3 generations. Because they don't transfer the skill, right? But it's not true that it's being held for a lot of generations. That's not true.
And a large portion of the American public tends to take the political viewpoint that any infringement on individual freedoms, even if the intention is for community good, is an automatic non-starter. And again, that stands in pretty stark contrast to the way that I see freedom expressed and celebrated here in Europe. You know, for sure, Europeans have a lot of the same freedoms that Americans do. They have the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression.
They don't have freedom of speech. They have, based on what a lot of Germans are telling me, they don't have freedom of speech. They have freedom of expression. Let's just get it right. Freedom of expression. And they explained to me what's the difference. It means that you can have the freedom of express yourself, but you cannot offend other groups. Am I right? Am I wrong? Let me know in the comment section below.
expression, the freedom of free movement, the freedom of religion. But when I talk to my European friends and colleagues and ask them to describe what freedom means to them, they often say that freedom is the freedom from something, not necessarily the freedom towards something. For example, it's why the freedom from being exploited in the workplace and loss of employment is...
Let me just hear that one more time. That was a huge conundrum here. Let me...
towards something. For example, it's why the freedom from being exploited in the workplace and loss of employment is the foundation of many European nations' labor laws and strong unions. The freedom from poverty is the foundation of many nations' pension systems, unemployment insurance, and strong social market economies. The freedom from medical debt is why almost all European countries have public health care
I'm sorry, folks. I don't know how the from is making sense here. The freedom from being free from the medical debt, the freedom from poverty, the freedom. It still sounds in the scheme of, again, this is interesting. It's still sounding from a position of materialism. Materialism. That's what I'm just getting for here.
Available for all citizens. Freedom, in a way, isn't something that you are necessarily chasing, but something that you are protecting for the entire community, particularly those who are the most vulnerable within our community. And it's that juxtaposition of towards versus from that really shapes a lot of the other themes that I'm going to talk about in this video.
That's beautiful.
Hey there. Hello. Howdy. Hey, Jane. How we doing today, Jim?
One major stereotype that I do think is true is that Americans are some of the friendliest people on the planet. And it's honestly something that I love about myself that I tend to attribute to being an American. It's this sense of openness and friendliness, the ability to just walk up to a stranger.
Canadians are more friendly than us. Canadians are way friendly than us.
On the street and strike up small talk. To me, that kind of friendliness is seen as a gesture of welcomeness and goodwill. But another stereotype about Americans is that this friendliness can sometimes come off as being superficial, that it only extends to pleasantries, and that underneath this kindness is a lack of real trust and friendship. And I do find that aspect of this stereotype to be at least partially true, particularly in certain contexts. When I look back at the United States, our goodwill, trust, kindness is often conditional, particularly when it applies to our community at large. In the past few decades, Americans, more than ever, seem to be increasingly afraid and less trusting of one another. And this, for me, is so extraordinarily apparent anytime we enter into a new election cycle. We hear lots of rhetoric about law and order, being tough on crime.
Well, we need to be tough on crime. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? We need to be tough in crime. You live in a country that is safe. You live in a country that's safe. It has a very strong police presence. Not at the extent of the United States, but we need to be tough on crime. This is crazy, man. The delusion with some Americans, man. The delusion, man. I'm telling you because I live in the cities. And this is the problem right here. This is the problem right here, man. We need to be tough on crime. Of course we do. I live in New York City during the 2020 coronavirus. It was the most dangerous time in my life, in my entire life. I was fearful, literally fearful, man. The police stand back because the mayor and the governor said, do not arrest people. It was the instilled today. Milwaukee is very dangerous. Chicago is very dangerous because it's the lose mentality and not being tough for crime. And some of you Germans have come here to the United States, and you can tell it's not our welcome areas. There's so many unwelcome areas. It's crazy. I would not even advise a German to come to the United States because we are very loose on crime, man. This is crazy, man.
demand law and order.
Crazy stuff, man. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, some of these delusional Americans, man.
You won't be safe in Joe Biden's America.
Lawlessness in our country.
Lawlessness begets lawlessness.
And unsurprisingly, everyday Americans respond to this rhetoric by being even more cautious and guarded and skeptical of
Well, but it's true. What is true? What are you talking about?
one another. According to 2023 data in the United States, 51 million households now have a video surveillance system.
Yes, we need them. Yes, we need them. What are you talking about? What about Oakland? What about Los Angeles? What about Anaheim? What about Houston, Dallas? They're very loose. Detroit, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Chicago, Minnesota. These people defunded the police, man. What are you talking about? You live in a country right now that they take these things seriously.
39 million of them have an alarm system. And the sad reality is that Americans aren't necessarily afraid of these other outsiders, but are also very much afraid of their neighbors and just their other community members at large. American kids don't walk to school, in part because of a pervasive fear of child abduction.
Because it's very high. Iowa and Illinois and Idaho, they will have one of the highest, man. I saw some numbers, I don't remember. It was kind of scary. And it's true, in Texas, they have the same problem. What are you talking about? I love my country, but we are, in some areas, we're not okay. We're not okay. Don't like this rhetoric, man.
Even though statistically it's extraordinarily rare.
No, it's
Statistics
not.
vary, but several sources suggest that the odds of your child being kidnapped are about 1 in 300,000. To put that into perspective, the odds that you will choke to death are around 1 in 3,400.
These
So in light of
I
all
have to
this
be careful
distrust,
with this statistic. I need to look them myself because I'm telling you guys, as an American, to you guys in Europe, there's Americans like this that they, for some reason, man, they go to different countries, right? And they really don't understand why some countries are safer, why countries just work a certain ways. You go into Europe, they have generations of understanding value for humanity, right? And there's law and order. In some areas, they don't need to just be too strong because they have had law and order for generations. You come to the United States, a loose country still, and you want to be just a little bit, let's say like loose in crime. No, man, I'm telling you.
Trust and skepticism, I found that for a lot of Americans, community is no longer really found in this physical sense, but in these smaller bubbles. We talk about having our religious community, our sports community, our insert hobby here community. We group together based on shared beliefs and shared interests, and not necessarily anymore a shared space, which in turn means that it becomes even more unlikely that I might talk to, interact, or identify with anyone who doesn't feel the same way that I do. I'm less likely to have my biases confronted, while simultaneously being more likely to not value diversity of opinions and perspectives, contributing perhaps to an ever-widening partisan gap. I don't see them as a valued member of my community, so why should I care about them? Okay, by the way, not me personally.
But it used not to be like this. That's the problem. Something happens in the conscience of Americans. Used not to be like that. And frankly, folks, I don't want to be surrounded or close to someone that think that we don't need to be tough on crime. Not it. I'm being very honest, right? I'm being very honest. Don't like to be close to it because that's dangerous. That's dangerous, folks. Right now, the United States is very loose on crime. You have videos literally of people stealing things and just committing crime. They don't get arrested. This is not me, conspiracy theory. You can literally just go right now on Instagram and just look for videos about this. And these videos are in the thousands. These people don't get arrested. No, man. I don't have time for debating security. And I've been around Europe, right? And one of the things that Europe has, right? Not only a very good conscience of community, but most importantly, their security is very, very, very well respected.
I'm speaking rhetorically here, but you get what I mean. But since
No, I
living
don't.
here in Europe, specifically in Germany, I have often felt that there is still a strong sense of community in the physical sense. Our little slice of the Schwarzwald isn't grand in size by comparison, but boy, are there a plethora of events, festivals, and parties that the entire community comes out for. Children are valued members of a community in their own right and have greater freedom to explore independently because there is a community of adults who are willing to shepherd them and watch them biking and playing on the streets. And even when
Yeah, that's a
you
good point.
scale that up and take a look at this sense of community on the national sense, to me, this is still so much more strong than it is in the United States.
I
For
agree.
example, it sounds
I
kind
agree,
of funny,
but why? Why? That's the reason why. Because they have a strong sense of culture. See, if that culture comes from not only 2, 3, 4, 5 generations, hundreds of generations.
I'd actually never heard the word solidarity being used in the civil discourse before until moving here. Like ever.
Solidarity?
But here, the collective support of your community, holding in solidarity with one another towards a common goal, is such an important part of life and understanding the
That's the
rest of the
unions, right?
country's culture, customs, and laws. And speaking of words, language is one of those quintessential differences between life in the United States and life here in Europe. Now, sure, of course, if you
That's
head to
beautiful, huh?
Miami, New York, or Los Angeles, essentially the large metropolitan coastal areas, you will hear more foreign languages and a little bit better accommodation of those languages. But in the overwhelming majority of the United States, if you don't speak English, you're gonna have a really hard time.
Well, because it's an English-speaking country. It's an English-speaking country. You go to Japan, you have to know at least something of Japanese, to just get around.
Because the thing is, although the majority of Americans probably do have at least an introduction into a foreign language because it's a prerequisite for entering university, the reality is that for most people, speaking another language is kind of seen like a cool party trick and not necessarily a quintessential life skill that you need to have. But here in Europe, the proximity to other countries and other languages makes learning those foreign languages essential for most professions and something that is much more broadly accommodated in everyday life. But a deeper consequence of languages is that communication facilitates understanding, and understanding facilitates cooperation. And the formation of the European Union itself is perhaps one of the best standing testaments to this cooperation. I mean, here you have a network of 27 separate countries with their own individual cultures, customs, traditions, and languages that have all managed to come together to form an internal market which allows free movement of goods, capital, services, and people. Which is why it is, quite frankly, so shocking to me when I hear my fellow Americans say things like, oh, universal healthcare will never work in the United States.
It will never work in the United States. It will never work in the United States because we already have systems like that implanted. It has nothing to do with the system itself. It's just how we handle business in the United States. There's states right now that they have free healthcare, even for illegal immigrants. But what happened is it's overspent, right? Some of these companies, right, and even state, they overspend. It doesn't work in the United States. Just the system itself, right? To implement it, right? It will be so hard. It will be like putting a circle through a triangle. The reason is, folks, and this is very simple. It's just that the mindset and the approach for wealth and resources. Nothing. If the United States was very like European countries, having the same approach to things, it might work. It might work. Might. But there's some demographics, some kind of approaches to certain things, right? They just simply don't work, folks. Just look at California. Just look at Oregon. Just look at what's the other one? Washington. These people are already try the European model, and these states are going down to the ground. It does not work. It does not work, folks. And a lot of people are trying to put that system, and they try in certain areas, and it went down to the ground because you have to put in context not only the money or the system, cultural, morals, approach, right? All these things do, even though it doesn't seem like it does make a difference, it does. Europe has a strong sense of community. She said it, right? But most importantly, helping your neighbor. And that you owe your neighbor some kind of, not moral duties, but responsibility. That is not in the United States because we are so a young country, right? Most importantly, we're driven by capitalism. It's not going to work, folks. It's not going to work. Some states already implemented. What about New York? New York City. These people already have free college. And guess what? Almost nobody goes there because their education is trash. People still go to private colleges. New York City and New York State, they have free college, and free healthcare, and nobody goes there. Nobody goes there because their service is trash. It doesn't work like that, folks. And I see some of the service and some of the videos of Europe, and I'm telling you, some of the services that are in Europe are amazing, are great. But it cannot be implemented in the United States because of the way our system is built. It's backwards. All backwards. All backwards. And I'm telling you, even putting some things in Europe that works in the United States, it will not work in Europe. It's the same thing, folks. It's not that easy.
It's because, Europe is much more homogenous than here in the US.
It is true. It is true. What you're talking about, it is true. It is true. It is more homogeneous. That is true. Why we just have to just put things under the rug? It is true. You're not telling me it's not true? You don't think that French people have a more sense of community and responsibility to another French person that has been around not only for 2 or 3 generations, for multiple generations? It's a different mindset, folks.
Which I just find so grossly misinformed.
No, it is not misinformed. It is true.
Europe is a tapestry of cultures, religions, and political ideas.
It has been built for many generations. Many generations. We are just a new country. So new. Right? And we just give some respect to Europe because they have been around for a lot of years. But it's true.
Ideologies. They don't always see eye to eye on issues, but they still manage to work together towards a shared common goal.
And we know that getting united decisions is always challenging, but this is an important decision that we need to make.
And at the heart of all of this cooperation is a shared appreciation for each other's languages. Whenever I travel back to the United States, I get this weird feeling like I'm in the center of the universe. And obviously, I know that's not the case, but the exchange between Europe and the US is not equal on both sides. Here in Europe, there's a steady stream of American news, movies, music. But when I'm over there, it doesn't really feel like there's much talk about what's going on in the rest of the world unless something really important happens, like war. Most mainstream media barely covers what's happening internationally, and in many ways, the US does seem pretty geographically isolated.
Why is that? Why is that? Because the media is a driving force. The most important, I think it's the third or fourth state of the nation. They need to make money. I hate them. Don't get me wrong. I don't like this. I don't watch news at all. I just get my sources and read a lot, but I don't get my sources for news. If you're the one coming to the United States and turning on the news and just watching CNN, it is your fault. Like most of these news network are not going to be around 15 years.
And linguistics plays a huge role in this. When we don't prioritize communication, those other pieces of understanding and cooperation start to erode. Speaking the language makes all of the difference when you want to move beyond just a superficial understanding of a country or culture and actually start to learn from one another and work together. Now, Lingoda is the sponsor of this video, and they offer a really powerful tool to prioritize the power of communication.
Yeah,
I've been open about my German language learning journey over the past 5 years,
it's good to,
and I cannot speak highly enough of the Lingoda platform and the progress that they have helped me achieve in becoming more integrated here. Lingoda is an online language school that connects students across the world with native-level teachers in live classes to learn a language. And since they offer classes in English, business English, Spanish, French, or German, their platform offers awesome opportunities for learning before your next adventure abroad. Lingoda hosts one-on-one or group learning sessions on Zoom for a range of abilities from beginner to advanced.
That's what I need.
And for me, this was perfect because I had already taken German language classes at university, and Lingoda allowed me to basically pick up where I left off. I chose to attend the small group classes, which are really small, with just a maximum of 5 students, making them very interactive.
I might check that out, man. Wow.
Classes are also available 24/7 and offer a highly immersive and flexible learning experience, which fits great into my busy schedule. But perhaps our most ingenious teaching tools are their sprint and super sprint challenges. If you stay consistent in your language learning, you are rewarded with either 50% of your money back or free credits to take more classes.
Okay.
So why not join the Lingoda Language Sprint and hit the ground running in 2024?
I might check that
This
out.
is a method that will truly help you reach your New Year's resolutions and level up your language skills. So click my link to save up to 30% and use my code type Ashton for an additional €20 or $25 off. We have a lot of very common metaphors in the American zeitgeist about being hardworking, about chasing success, and about realizing your dreams. For decades, workers in the US have subscribed to the notion of the American dream, that if individuals work hard enough, they too can successfully carve out their own piece of the pie.
I don't like those houses, man.
But
I just don't like those houses, man. There's a bunch of them over here. I really don't like them, and they have no personality. They look cheap too, like 4 pieces of wood put together kind of thing. Ugh.
There's also a lot of pressure that if you don't work hard, you're also just easily replaced. And for the
No, it's true. It's true. I mean, it's true in any part of the world. Would you tell me that in Germany that's not true? Like you don't work hard, you keep the job. This is crazy, man. So you're saying that, but it's like implying that in Germany that's not like that. Like if you don't work hard, you still keep the job.
For the longest time, these ideals have been pretty incompatible with the idea of paying new parents to spend time off from work with their kids. Nearly every industrialized country in the world provides working mothers with at least 3 months of paid maternity leave, the minimum recommended by the United Nations International Labor Organization. And in most European countries, employers and employees pay a tax to fund the benefit. Now, some US businesses voluntarily offer paid parental leave to their workers, but only about 1 in 10 workers in the country get such a benefit from their employer.
True.
And low-wage workers are the least likely to get this. And to give a little bit of a personal example here, my sister works as a bank teller in the United States, and when she had my niece, her employer was pretty generous in giving her 6 weeks of paid time off.
That's low. There's a lady here that I work, the company that currently works. She just started like the same time as me. We haven't been in the company for not even half a year. We're 3 months and a half, and they give them 8 weeks. And that means you stay a year. They told them they will probably give her 16 weeks. Interesting, right?
Generous because by American standards, really in her industry, that is quite generous. Now, she chose to stay home for 8 weeks with her daughter, which her employer let her do, but was for sure to let her know that those final 2 weeks of her maternity leave would go unpaid. But in contrast, I have a year of paid maternity leave here in Germany, and my husband also has the option to share that time with me while still receiving a sizable portion of his paycheck. In the States, the predominant system is that if your kids get sick and can't go to daycare or school, that you either have to...
you do that here in the United States, I can tell, because I have some conversation with some folks about it, And some of these folks, they will take literally the maternity leave and leave the job afterward. That's why they don't do it here, man. See, there's nuance to these things, man. A lot of these companies are worried because some Americans are kind of greedy. I'm not gonna lie. Some of these Americans, they're basically gonna just take their maternity leave after the year. They're gonna just say, okay, bye. I don't want to work anymore. I'm telling you because I have some conversation with some folks, and some of those folks, that's what they did, and I found it kind of not only disrespectful, but very educational, I would say. I didn't get any paternity leave as soon as my wife was pregnant and gave birth, and I said, okay, but I'm not going to lie. I wish I had like a week off at least. But that's why we're doing the YouTube thing. That way we can just reclaim some of that time.
Use your vacation time or go unpaid to take care of them. But in most of Europe, you are legally entitled to take time off of work, paid, in order to take care of them. And most times your boss doesn't bat an eye. Like, of course family comes first. You should go home and take care of them. You shouldn't be penalized for having children. And to be 100% honest, it's exactly this American mentality of how they treat parental leave, time off with family, vacation time, and sick leave. It's probably the biggest reason why I really don't see myself moving back to the
You know
United
what? I have
States
to agree with her. I don't like
soon.
how we manage the pay time off, the vacations. The way they do it is kind of weird, man. It's weird. I agree with her.
And the thing is, I think this is really sad that instead of seeing the value in investing in families, the American conversation often turns to pure economics and the cost as a scapegoat for why they won't implement family-friendly policies.
If you're saying that the man and the woman should both get like 3 months off, this is a new thing.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
Isn't
it's
it?
not new in Europe, but
We're not in Europe. This is better. This is America.
And this entire conversation culminates in...
I'm telling you, folks. I'm telling you. Here, for some reason, this is how we think it. Like, I would take that parental leave for a year, and I will leave the job at the end of the year and just find a new job. I'm telling you, folks. That's how a lot of Americans think. A lot of these private companies, that's where they're ready to go, Cause they done it. They that's how they do it, and I think that's sad, but that's why.
In something
and it's true if a mom and dad, both of them take it, and then they have to supplement their income on top of that without production. Oof. Oof.
But I do think America has a lot of, and that's wealth. For all
Not true. We're broke. Not true. We used to have a lot of wealth. Right now, we're broke. We don't have money. We don't have money. Our debt is just skyrocketing. It's crazy. And we do not have the wealth to just... It's not true. We don't have that much wealth anymore. That's why things are so expensive. That's why everything is so high that, you know, if you're making $60,000 a year, in my case, that's what I'm making, close to, and you live in the middle of nowhere, you know, inflation is just really following you. It's not true. Wealth is, I don't know where's the concept of wealth is just coming from. We owe money to everybody.
All of the negative things that I have observed, America can be a really nice place to live if you can afford it. Great schools, great technology, almost unimaginable amount of choice and material wealth in many zip codes around the nation. But an interesting difference that I've noticed between the US and Europe isn't necessarily in actual wealth, but the perception of wealth and how much weight we put into that perception. In the US, we do have this mentality of keeping up with the Joneses. There's a constant desire to acquire more and more material wealth so that our relative wealth matches those around us. After all, my American dream needs to be just as impressive as my neighbor's, right? Everyone wants a
Really?
better body, better clothes, a better car, a bigger house, a swimming pool, and to live in a
little
gated
cupcake,
community
right?
in the sunshine of California, Las Vegas, and Florida.
No.
According to the Census Bureau, in the space of 30 years, the average American home ballooned from 1,725.
This is a problem, folks. What she's talking about right now is a huge problem. And it started with the boomers generation. They start taking homes that they cannot afford, so the price of the home just skyrocket. Plus, you add that with the inflation and the printing of money. Oof.
5 square feet to nearly 2,600 square feet. But just like in The Wizard of Oz, when they say,
Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Americans are buying all of that supersize me wealth on a heap of borrowed money.
Yeah, that's what I
The
said.
national mortgage debt now totals a shocking $12.14 trillion. And again, if we're going to talk about at least partially true stereotypes, the American proclivity towards ostentatious wealth is certainly one of them. After all, we now live in a society where our once highest public servant and now GOP frontrunner is a real estate developer and reality TV star who lives in a penthouse on the 66th floor, emblazoned with his name and decorated in a Louis XIV style with ceilings painted with 24
Somewhere.
karat
Come
gold.
on now. What is going on with you? Why are you getting a little about Trump? It's just the epitome of the American dream. I don't see nothing wrong with that. It's like aspiring to greater things, right? There's nothing wrong with that.
Marble walls and Corinthian.
Who is saying that? Who is saying that? Who is seeing or watching Trump's tower saying, man, all those things? I'm a guy. I'm not seeing that. I just want to make sure that I have a roof over my head. They just make sure my family's okay. I'm not thinking about these things. Who is thinking about these things?
Columns.
Here's the good news. I'm very rich.
Somewhat unironically, he too is currently facing federal charges for allegedly lying about the value of his assets on statements.
Yeah, which is not true. That thing you will fall apart. Man, okay, this video is okay. All right, I knew it. I knew it. This is very. Listen, man. Trump is not the most perfect guy, but no reason to bring him up. No reason. You can mention Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, right? Elon Musk, but you have to bring GOP and Trump. Sure.
He made to lenders. And please
how she went from talking about Germany, Europe to Trump, man. This is crazy, folks.
Get me wrong, I don't think that Europe is immune to this proclivity for wealth, but I do feel like it's worse in the United States, specifically very much so in Los Angeles. It's kind of like being in the eye of the storm. And yet, hey, it's coming soon to a theater near you in Europe and Asia and a lot of other places. Because the drivers are globalism and media, and oftentimes American media specifically, but media that goes everywhere, along with branding and the values of corporate capitalism, which, quite frankly, are international. And I draw a connection to a lot of these themes that I've talked about today to this connotation of the American dream. And I do think it is something that is still so very strong in the United States because on a positive note, in the US, it really does feel like, you know, if you dream hard enough, you can reach anything. And perhaps that contributes to the entrepreneurial spirit of business.
Well, that's why you're in Germany, right? But just because you live in that spirit and you manage to just not only achieve your dreams, right? Well, do what you love. You manage to achieve your dreams. Go to Germany. Learn Germany from early on. And just go back to Germany. Go to Germany. Follow your dream. Have your family in Germany and raise your family in Germany. Like we have to see, sometimes we have to see ourselves in the mirror sometimes, right? When it comes to a lot of things here. Good points. A lot of good points. A lot of good perspective. However, we have to be careful. You have to look at yourself in the mirror. You know, and I knew what side of the equation she was on. but I still give her the benefit of the doubt because I want her to just explain her points. But we have to be very careful here.
Creation culture in the US and the proliferation of startups. America has been historically a great place to make something of yourself. And that is something to be celebrated. But if there's one thing that living in Europe has afforded me, it's the perspective that comes with time and distance. And again, Europe isn't perfect, but I do think there are a lot of things that Europeans get right that Americans could really benefit from.
I agree. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. There's some things that I really love about Europe, and one of those is moral and culture. I agree.
So again, if you think of America as a house, a dream house,
That's
if
a
you
beautiful
will,
house.
when you step outside of that house and look back in through the windows, you start to see the bigger picture of the price that we've paid as a society in the pursuit of the American dream. For so long, we've thrown everything we have into investing in this dream house, but haven't spent nearly as much time investing in protecting it through social insurances that keep the system healthy at all stages of life, or supporting the community the house was built within. And for me, the cracks are starting to show in the foundation. But I know that what I've talked about today are really just my personal observations and opinions, and again, you are more than welcome to disagree with me. And on some level, perhaps the way I see the world says a lot more about me than it does the world.
Yeah, and that last statement, I think you're right. I think you're right, yeah. I think you have to be careful. You have to. I think you have to go deeper in understanding why Europe is the way it is. And the reason I understand Europe in such instance because I come from a place very similar to that, right? I come from Puerto Rico, and we Puerto Ricans we have a strong European culture in the sense of lifestyle, right? We have a strong we hold our Spaniard traditions very strong, right? Our architecture is very Spaniard. Our religion is very European, right? Coming to the United States, I can see the differences, right? I can really see coming to the mainland. I can see the differences, right? When I went to Europe, I felt very connected to the culture, right? Very connected, especially in Italy. Italy, I was like, man, am I in Mayagüez over here? And I'm in this small town in South. I'm in San Germán over here. What's going on? Very, very connected. And the way they move, the Italians move around, and they were just, being with each other. It reminds me a lot of Puerto Rico for some reason. And she had to go deeper in understanding why Europe is the way it is. It's not because it is. It is like that because it is. It's just European. No, there's a deeper reason why, right? And Europe is Europe, right? Europe and all, right? From Bulgaria, Romania, Switzerland, Germany, France, all the way to Sweden, even the UK, right? There's some things, right, that us as Americans sometimes we forget, and it's just the generational culture that has been implemented in that land for hundreds of generations. Okay, that had created not only culturally communities that can understand each other, but that we all agree in these certain things we cannot negotiate. It's like going to Japan, and it happens with a lot of Americans. They go to a different country. Oh, everything in the United States is bad, and everything for this new country is good. And I'm like, no. We have bad things in the United States, very bad, especially when it comes down to crime. My goodness. But you have to go deeper to understand why the country that you are, you like these things. And then if you're coming back to the United States, understand why those things were good over there, and now do you need to bring them here? It's like going to Europe, you're very healthy, then you come back to the United States, then you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's like it doesn't work like that. You don't go to Europe, eat a nice cappuccino with a bread that has just been cultivated for hundreds of years, and you feel healthy, to come back to just go there to Subway and eat just cheap bread and then criticize the United States. It doesn't work like that. Understand why these countries are the way they are, And not only not put it on the United States, but put it for yourself. Put this context and just value to yourself. That's where I see it. And I'm telling you because I come from that perspective that I've been around the world and I can see certain things. And I can tell you folks, a lot of these Americans, they don't really understand why these countries are the way they are. They just think that Europe just became Europe and that's it. And we just compare and that's it. No, man. No. And her comment about tougher crime, I'm like, you crazy. I'm sorry. We are very lacked off, very lazy when it comes down to crime. Very, very lazy. I don't know. Hey, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I was a little bit animated by it because some of these comments is my problem with a lot of the Americans. They really don't understand why certain things are the way they are. Right? Healthcare system in Europe works because not only they all understand the contribution to the system. Most importantly, it's a country that has been around for thousands of years. So they all have a common goal. So you cannot bring this in the United States when we don't even have, 300 years as a country? Well, 1776. Yeah, it's not even 100. It's not even 300 years, folks. We already have programs that we put money, and these things do not work. When I'm saying not work, it's 100%, probably 0.5. It doesn't work, folks. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.